Bev, number one, is 3 years younger than I. So growing up, I was ahead of her and not necessarily involved in her life, or I would have checked out her mania for theater a little more. Uh, she loves theater, and my daughter here can tell you that she um, would do anything to. I mean, it was together doing housework. I don't know, but she loved to put on a show, and she'd entertain. I've said many times, one or 1,000. I took her with me once to New York, and she looked and looked and looked to see Barefoot in the Park. She got some tickets. She couldn't find them and couldn't find it, and finally she knew how to get back to Grand Central Station. When I came to pick her up, she had about 60, 70 people there, and she was telling them about this episode she had with the not using her ticket for Barefoot in the Park. And one of the guys who worked for the railroad there at Grand Central Station said, "Lady, think about it this way. Most people, when they come to New York, go back with half a ticket to a Broadway show. You'll have the whole ticket. That'll be rather unique." But anyway, she had the 50 people there listening to her, and Jackie would know she'd be on high something. But my involvement in theater was in response to a feeling I have about a marriage, and that is, if you want to be happy, let your mate be happy. I didn't realize how much it took to make her happy in theater, but she was on contract to be in 8 shows, Broadway shows by Rodgers and Hammerstein, a guy named, what?
Prince.
Leroy Prince was the producer, and he was terrible. But anyway, she was with people like Howard Keel and Marianne Mobley, and Hugh O'Brien. Hugh O'Brien was in Guys and Dolls, and he was a great Sky Masterson until he started to sing. Then you were kind of wondering. But anyway, she had, I've forgotten their name now, so it was back in the 60s, but she was a member of Actors Equity at that time, and she had a family, a man and wife from New York, said, if you'll come to New York, you can stay with us till you get established. And Howard Keel said if she'd come to Hollywood, or to California, that he would introduce her around. And this kind of piqued her ego, and she was torn. The biggest flaw she had was she had 4 kids under 12, and the youngest one was about a year old. And she tells the story, she's going to pray about it. I think Jackie's heard this story. We had an upstairs bedroom, and she headed up the stairs to pray about it. She got in the room and heard a no, and that affected her a lot, and she decided then to start producing something locally that she could feel was at least on the edge of professional. She had 2 people in the Tabernacle Choir and 1 pianist that could play anything if you just hum the melody, and they would practice, and Jackie may recall nights she couldn't sleep. And they could actually perform for over 2 hours without looking at music. So anyway, she built this, and then she started looking for a site to build a theater, and I thought, anyway, she drove all over 4 counties, Morgan, Box Elder, Davis, and Weber here in Utah, looking for an old church or whatever, and ended up finding a location in Centerville, Utah, it had been a clothing material store, I think. And anyway, that's where it started, and she got some other people that were about as deep in show business as she was, and started doing about 7 shows a year. And in the process, we didn't get along too well with our partners, and she went ahead and started doing children's shows in spite of the understanding she had from the others that it would not work. But it did work, and so she put on children's shows. But our difficulties led to finally our leaving there and coming into Ogden area and finding an old Smith's food store. And that's how we got here.